Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. The Broadband Bunch Zero Touch Learning Series is live. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Craig Corbin. Today's session, After the Build, Creating Sustainable Broadband Operations. Broadband Bunch podcasts and Zero Touch Learning Series brought to you, as always, by Utopia Fiber, Building a More Connected Nation, by DXTEL, creators of the Harper Broadband Marketing Library, and by your Zero Touch automation experts, ETI Software Solutions. Be sure to follow the Broadband Bunch on Facebook at facebook.com/the Broadband Bunch, and on Twitter at twitter.com/podcast bunch. You can access Broadband Bunch podcasts on Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and on iHeartRadio. A couple of quick reminders before we introduce our panel. Today's session is interactive, and we do encourage you to submit questions via the chat function, and our team will monitor those throughout the event. The session is also being recorded and will be available for future access. Also, please feel free to submit potential topics for future Zero Touch Learning Series sessions, or if you'd like to suggest prospective panelists. And again, that can be done via the chat function. And thanks everyone for your participation. Our moderator today, a 30-year veteran of the communications industry, Heather Gold is CEO of HBG Strategy and previously served as President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association, following her tenure as Senior Vice President of External Affairs and Access Management for EXO Communications. She graduated magna cum laude from Tufts University with bachelor's and master's degrees in economics, earned an MBA in finance and marketing from Washington University in St. Louis, and also completed the general management program of the Harvard Business School. Our moderator for After the Build, Creating Sustainable Broadband Operations, Heather Gold. Heather, have a great one.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sustainable Broadband Operations After the Build. The terrific news about our panel today is that they all have been in business for a while, so they have a lot to share. And even better, they have all created sustainable networks using different ownership models, which is, as always, our message. There is no one way to skin this broadband cat. So I want to make that point again, that you have to discover what brings the best broadband for your community and then go out and find what fits. Let me introduce our panelists. I'm very excited today. We have Rob Petrarch, who is the CEO and Chief Technology Officer, very apropos to this discussion, from Gosfield North Communications Co-op, which is a fiber to the farm co-op in Ontario, in Western Ontario, near where many of my family members were from. We have Russ Berthaler, who is the Senior Manager for Wholesale Fiber at Grant County Public Utility District in Washington. And last but not least, we have Hank Blackwood, Chief Technical Services Officer for Dalton Utilities OptiLink from Dalton, Georgia. So we also have a wide geographic range here. So gentlemen, as we start, let's take a minute and tell our audience about your companies, how long you've been operating, and what specifically what areas you're serving. So Hank, you want to go first?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Heather. Dalton Utilities been around as a traditional utility company since the late 1800s. We decided in the late 90s that we needed to sort of move into the next century with our internal communications and whatnot. So we started building some fiber optic connectivity between our campuses, and that turned into a little bigger project when customers started approaching us asking, hey, what are you doing? What are y'all doing? What are y'all building fiber for? And of course, all of our facilities are next to our customers' facilities. That's that being Dalton is the carpet capital of the world, and so a lot of manufacturing here. So we started building some connectivity, sort of wide area managed networks for some of the industrial customers of ours and letting them haul data around town just like we were doing. Well, the next thing we know, we're offering high-speed internet service around the year 2000, 2001, and by 2003, our board of commissioners decided, you know, this has been such a good thing for us internally and for some of our larger customers. Let's offer this to all of our homes. So we started building in 2003 a fiber to the home platform to cover basically the city of Dalton and the surrounding areas. And we launched a internet, telephone, and cable television offering in 2003 and have been growing it ever since. And today we are a gig city, 10 gig city, and offering over the top video products now. And a lot of other things have changed, but we're still committed to our community. We've been here the longest. We feel like we're the best provider for our folks. We're an advocate for our customers, and we like the fact that we're a hometown company. Our customer service has always been our focus, and the folks you see at the grocery store and see at the church or see at Walmart, whatever, those are the same folks that we're serving. And we're just a phone call away because we're just right next door. So we've been in business now as a triple play, I guess, provider since 2003 and continue to grow.
Russ.
Thanks, Heather. With Grant PUD, and we're in the middle of the state of Washington. We're in high desert. You think of Washington, most people think of wet. We're not. We get less than 10 inches of rain a year. It's actually a fairly magnificent area for civil engineering because of the canal system and the irrigation system that was put in back in the mid 1900s. So we have over $1 billion worth of agriculture in Grant County. We're a 2,700 square mile county with 100,000 population, and almost half of that is in 3 of the towns. So once you get outside of the little towns, it's pretty sparse. We've actually been in the fiber to the home business as long as Hank has in Dalton. We did a little pilot in 2000, decided it was the utility of the future, happened to have some capital that we could put into it, and started building gig fiber to the home and offering services across it in 2001. The interesting part in Washington State until last week, it was wholesale only for public utility districts. We couldn't be the retailer. So we actually set a platform, provision VLANs for third parties to be the service providers. And so it's a true open access. We have 15 retail service providers on the network, and then an additional 8 that just do wholesale or cherry pick a few of the businesses along the way. Some of our providers offer triple play. The vast majority of them actually only offer data. But of course, everybody knows that data gets you pretty much everything you need these days. One of our providers that was offering triple play actually at the end of this week will no longer be offering a video package. They will be over the top video only on a data connection. So they've lost a few customers over that to the only other provider that still offers a full triple play cable TV package, but not that many. So the times are changing. So that's kind of where we're at.
Interesting. We'll have some other questions about that when we get further along. Rob.
Hello. Thanks for having me, and nice to meet everybody on the conference as well. So I work for Gosfield North. We are a rural copper and fiber traditional telephone company that's been in existence for about 112 years. It was a privately owned telephone exchange when it first started, migrated into a municipally owned telephone exchange service, and then converted into a cooperative all along the way. And in the past 11 years, we've spent a lot of time, developing and improving the services we're offering, doing fiber to the home, and expanding as a CLEC. outside of our traditional operating territory to underserviced areas in the region that we're in. Geographically, we're about 20 minutes south of Detroit, Michigan. So we are the lowest end of Canada, the same latitude as Northern California. Also heavy agriculture in the rural area that we're in, with about 155 different greenhouse growers and operators, as well as wineries and everything like that. So extremely rural. Our focus has been predominantly servicing the underserved, and fiber to the farm, I think, is the best way to put it. So I've invested a lot of my time and brain power into figuring out how we could push fiber out into these rural areas in a cost-effective manner that would keep us sustainable, I guess is the best way to put it. But a lot of the comments that I've heard from Russ and Hank, I can echo. It's almost identical. We are ye old telephone company, been around forever. I think one of the major differences is that we are able to provide the services that we offer. We are triple play, so we do phone, internet, and television. The one benefit we have is that we are able to offer television both as an app and as a set-top box. And that's just kind of to be able to adapt to the growing changes and needs that we find from our subscribers and customers along the way. But yeah, I won't get into too many more of the details because I'm sure they're going to come up in the questions later.
So gentlemen, why don't we also just quickly say how many subscribers each of you have? Rob, how many subscribers do you have in North Gosfield?
We have about 2,700 and growing.
Okay. And Russ and Grant?
We've got 24,000 out of the 35,000 that we're in front of. We've got 24,000 of them hooked up.
We've got 14,000 out of about 19,000 passed.
So we have small, middle, and big, so that's good. So the first question I wanted to ask you guys is to discuss the hardest initial aspect of going from the transition that happened once you did all the excitement of getting the network built, then to keep it up and running. So who wants to take a shot at that? Russ, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can dive into it. You know, we're an electric utility, tried and true electric utility. So the telecom thing, when our commission said they wanted to get into the telecom business, pretty foreign. No one really knew the ins and outs, a lot of research, a lot of vendors' promises. The biggest difficulty that we had, number one, was actually internal dissension. We've got, you know, back then we had 500 and some employees. Now we've got 700 and some overall for the whole utility, because we got big generation, we've got all that. A lot of people didn't want to be in the comm business, so it was hard to get everybody pulling together. So that internal dissension made a lot of things more difficult for us. But we did a lot of home growing of applications, and we started off manually provisioning everything at the edge. And so our biggest difficulty was probably actually pulling that together and automating and pulling data into the same spot so that we could actually auto provision and things of that nature. We struggled with that for quite a few years.
Hank, what about for you?
We very similar. The one thing that I would say, when we started doing, after we had the network built and started turning up customers, yeah, that was as Russ said, provisioning was extremely manual. The problem was there was no software on the market. There was nothing really suited in the market for this. And even contract labor was a little difficult. And we had partnered with somebody a long time ago, and they still work with us to do that, because we had guys that had installed telephone wire and installed cable TV coax, but nobody had ever really hung a O&T on the side of a house, you know, this whole idea of installing fiber. So that was a big transition, and we all learned together what to do and what not to do. And so that transition, making the routine was difficult, because there wasn't a whole lot of software out there. And between, say, ETI and companies like 5 Inc. and those folks, you know, made the software transition easier. We also had a hard time finding qualified personnel to work on the network because heretofore fiber had been a very specialized part of the business. You hung fiber, spliced fiber, and that's all you did. And this idea of having a one-stop shop for going from making the fiber drop to hooking up a customer's computer and television, that there was a big learning experience, and that's the biggest change, and that it has evolved over the last 17, 18 years for us to where the challenge is still finding good help, but even though there's a lot of triple play going on, it's still not everybody understands every aspect of each of those three different utilities. So that's making the routine was tough.
Rob shaking his head. Is that your similar experience?
Yeah, actually, pardon me.
You just put yourself on mute. There you go.
It wouldn't let me unmute. Yeah, so learning curve 100% for our own staff was an issue. Getting everyone up to speed, everyone was excited about getting everything in the ground and the technology that drove all the services, but then you're faced with how do you test it? What do you do when the service isn't working? Nuances like, the drop that went into the house was loomed too tightly in the box on the side of the house or something like that. Kinks in the fiber, like little things start to come out here and there. And the other thing that we found really, really challenging as well was actually educating on the customers and subscribers on what they actually had. Especially in rural areas, they're used to, everything from fixed wireless to cellular to copper services and 5 meg internet connections on DSL and everything like that. So a lot of it was managing and educating on the disbelief that they were actually going to have something better and more efficient than what they had in the first place. And then also conversely, just like learning how to set up the services and install the services, was training our staff on how to educate the customers on what they had at the same point in time. And it felt like initially that hurdle was the biggest hurdle to get through, was just the education and then helping spread that education from home to home, especially in a rural setting. There were a lot of church halls that were rented out over the course of our initial fiber build to basically rally the troops, so to speak, and get everyone understanding just what we were bringing to their homes and farms along the way.
And then how did you guys, I heard from, and I've heard this from Rob when we've talked offline, a lot of discussion about homegrown software applications. How did that work out for everybody? It seems to have been trial by error on this, or thank God you all have a good systems background. Hank, why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then I'll have Rob talk about some of the challenges he's going through right now.
We had started without any sort of automated work order system and no way to provision and track, who was where and what to have a baseline. And we actually went through a couple of software vendors and ended up with 5 Incorporated out of Alabama with their software. And even then, working with our own IS staff and 5 Inc. and some of our installers and our contractor, we worked together to put together a billing package that would work and keep all that information so we could track inventory at the house, set top boxes because we launched with more of an analog type cable system, and be able to track all those things. And then through that process, we went through a flow through provisioning upgrade where ETI actually stepped in, and we worked with those guys and wrote a piece of software, and they modified something they had done. 5 Inc. modified something they had in the past to where we could turn up a customer in the office and it would activate the equipment out in the field. And that became, once we had a number of customers on board, and you've got move-in, move-outs in apartment buildings or, non-payment cutoffs, all those kind of things, rather than rolling a truck now, we could flip a switch essentially here at the office and turn that back on. But it took a lot. We had a lot of talented guys locally that had worked with our traditional utility billing system for water, gas, sewer, and electricity. It sort of moved over in the, now we're not measuring units of consumption as much as we are flat rates, but being able to work with the billing system. So it was a collaboration for like I said, even down to the contractor helping, hey, this is what my guy needs in the field. So that was and we're still using a lot of that software today because it's just been polished and refined and polished and refined to where I don't know that we could find a system we'd like quite as much as our own, so that we could even move.
You could probably sell it.
Maybe so.
So Russ, you've gone through some particular challenges as an open access provider, I would think as well, right?
Yeah, they're OSS, BSS, and open access never cross paths. The conversation, it's like, yeah, you're open access, we don't know what to do with you. So internally, we had some brilliant programmers and a couple of contract brilliant programmers that actually took just a ticketing system and built provisioning APIs out of a ticketing system. And, honestly, it served us pretty well. It's pretty it takes a lot more manpower than a good OSS BSS does. And it's gotten us this far, but I'll admit right now, we've got ETI on contract. They've said they can do open access and they're going to try to prove it with us and one of our neighbors. And everything looks like it will pull it together and actually make it a very automated, slick system that lets us essentially grow without adding staff, because staff is the tough thing to get. And our brilliant programmers from 20 years ago, amazingly, some of them don't work with us anymore and they're retired and things like that, and they're hard to replace. So we're definitely looking forward to a kind of an all-in-one package instead of having to use our homegrown stuff.
And Rob, I know you've had some challenges. You've been discussing some of the things you wanted to do with customer service and being challenged by that.
Yeah, being in a rural telecom, and again, the challenges of the staff and how many you can retain and what you can afford to retain reasonably becomes a challenge now in a 24/7 industry. So what we've been working on in the background is a customer-facing interface that gives them access to everything that has to do with their account, right down to the wireless devices in their house. And I think, Heather, recalling our conversation, one of the things in particular that has driven me nuts in my 24 years of telecom is the last line of every piece of electronics that connects to the internet very, very clearly says, if all else fails, contact your internet service provider. And I'm seeing the chuckles because everyone feels the pain. I know. So what we're trying to do and what we're building is basically a portal that allows you as the subscriber to see what you just bought from wherever you bought it from, whether or not it's connected in your house, the degree that it's connected at, but also see the services that you're paying for at the same time. To the point when just talking about provisioning and AI, we want you to be able to change your internet package on the fly for a weekend and have the system automatically turn it off because you've set that date. That kind of customization. What that does, in my opinion, is it frees up my staff, who are extremely trained, extremely technical, extremely helpful, extremely customer serving, to be more customer serving with the customers that might need a little bit more time, or to repurpose their time for something that's a little bit more efficient, let's say, rather than just stuck in a phone call that really could be a 15-minute fix from a subscriber logging into their own interface kind of thing. And also what I think it does is it gives the subscribers the ability to be in control of their own services. They no longer feel like they're tied to having to call into an office. Much to the chagrin of my employees, I am not trying to replace them with software robots and monkeys. In fact, I want to give them more opportunity to be able to have more time to be cognitive, be creative, be thinking of what we need to do to facilitate providing better services rather than trying to put out fires. We want to prevent them.
I hear you. Well, I have to say, you guys are not the information you're sharing today, as somebody who went through the early dismantling of or early emboldening of the competitive local exchange industry, I think you all will remember CLEX, their big challenge in interconnection with Lex was getting flow through provisioning for access. So you would have thought we could have learned something then in the late 90s, but I guess not. So gentlemen, I think it's very important to discuss what kind of analytics you use to see if in fact you're operating effectively and efficiently, and you know what kind of systems you need to rely on that. So Hank, why don't you lead us off on that?
Sure. One of the things that before we had the software in place to sort of, be able to have all the metrics that we wanted, we had a real simple thing that we did, and this came out of our traditional utility business, where we had a sort of a manager on duty program here, which was a training program for employees here. And one of the things we would do is every morning, this individual who was in this training would look at all utility sectors and just look for oddball things happening, look at trends. So we started doing that pretty soon out of the gate with our telecom business, looking at essentially the trouble calls that we'd receive from customers, or just outage, anything that had happened that was oddball over a 24-hour period. The next morning, somebody would review that manually. And that quickly turned into a sort of a list of people that, we would call people frequent flyers there. And that was that our issue, or is it a customer? Like Rob said, hey, call your service provider. And was that a problem? So we started looking at this recidivism rate then, I guess you would say, as to what the problems were on this list. And we learned within probably 6-8 months how to start looking at certain trends. We'd never done this before, looking at certain trends for whatnot. We could sort of start looking at, well, this installer always has this issue, or when we install this product, we need to change our literature a little bit because people are automatically assuming something. And a good example of that early on was we were installing an ONT. There was no modem. There was no cable modem. There was nothing in the house to, we had an Ethernet port on the side of the house, and we left you a cable to plug into something. And that confused people, and people would call us after they'd had service for 2 or 3 weeks, and they'd have a problem with their PC, and they'd be like, hey, if you'll just tell me where the modem is, I'll reset it. Oh, there isn't a modem. That's not the way, so there was, we had to realize, okay, we've got to approach this differently. So we used a lot of customer feedback as our initial metrics. As time has gone on, we've got a pretty impressive alarm panel that we use with something similar to like a SolarWinds. It's very similar to the way SolarWinds works, where we track big switches down to the equipment on the side of a customer's home. And now we've got wireless devices that people buy from us to use for Wi-Fi that we can look at and do sort of analytics that way, and it helps us continue to trend down to smaller and smaller. But the basic thing that always comes out of our metrics, 2 things have been the same the entire time. One is we learn every day we can communicate something better to our customer base about how to use something. Or 2, there's a training issue that we need to go back and spend a little time with our folks, either on the phone talking to customers or with the guy in the house doing the install. So those metrics, even though the metrics have improved in the way we gather those, the outcomes are almost always the same. And so I think we just helps us continue to up our game a little bit in a very competitive environment.
So Russ, have you had similar situations?
Since we're wholesale only, we don't face the retail customer. It's a little different world for us. We actually, the biggest thing for us is our system uptime. We look at it, when we started out, we looked at it all the way to the edge. looking at we call it a gateway, the ONT on the side of the house. We alarmed every one of those anytime they bumped. In the middle of our deployment, though, we started allowing people to power those and even requiring people to power those at the site as opposed to off of our electric meter, the way we originally did it. So we actually stopped watching those bumps because some people put them into a switched outlet. There's all sorts of reasons that those go up and down. But we absolutely monitor everything from there back, and look at traffic through all the ports, and because we're transport, so we're just looking to make sure that transport layer is working. We have a goal of 99.98% of the time being up. We're meeting that pretty easily. We're an active Ethernet network. It's when you have to do maintenance, you bump some of that stuff out, but we always do our maintenance in a maintenance window at midnight. So really, our service providers give us feedback when there's any issues out in the field. They're our main source, but as long as our system is up and we're getting more effective, I mean, we look at the finances of it. It's like, are we getting lower cost per insight every year? What are and that's the bottom line for us. Are we improving? So
how many ISPs are on your network? Russ, how many ISPs?
We got 15. We've got 15 that do the retail, and then another 8 that are wholesale only, like the CenturyLinks and folks of the world that we just transport across. So we get feedback from them when there's an issue.
Do your customers know to call them rather than, as Rob said, when in doubt, call your ISP?
We put out a lot of information about that, but our power dispatch side, they absolutely get some calls in the middle of the night. And because we're the electric utility, everybody knows us. I mean, they know us from the electric side. But far and away, they're really good about calling their service providers, honestly, and working it out, because usually it is a problem at the service provider level, not at our transport level.
Interesting. So Rob, what are some of the analytics you've been using to see if you're operating effectively and efficiently?
Well, due to our size, generally it's install rates. So if I were to break it down, it would be categorized. So obviously network health and maintenance is important. So we do monitor absolutely everything under the sun. We make sure that our transport links and transit services are never functioning above or sustained over 80%, things like that, to make sure that the experience for our end users are going to be great all of the time. The other thing that we do too, though, is we look at churn. So are we losing subscribers? Are subscribers unsubscribing to specific services? In Canada in particular, in the rural areas, dial tone is now going the way of the dinosaur. It's a countdown, basically. So we're paying attention to those numbers, because for every phone subscriber we lose, we know we need to get another internet subscriber somewhere else. And because we're only on our own built infrastructure, it's critical. So basically, we're constantly moving the pieces around our risk map to ensure that we're in front of new customers and growing as best as humanly possible. But I would say the major ones are, we're still in a growth phase. So it would be installs and the rate of installs. We do track everything down to the service per customer, per CLEC, per ILEC, and all that other great stuff too. Time to live. So how long between the time that someone calls in for service to the time that they're actually turned up and in service? In a lot of cases, because we're building over underserved areas, there's timelines for getting permits, services have to be brought to the houses and stuff like that. And then the third is contractor reports. So I really can't stress this enough with people who are building fiber. You need to have a great relationship with your contractor and the crew, to the point where that you can show up. You can show up at lunch with some coffees, basically, and hammer out whatever issues are going on. And if they do run into something, they're going to call you. And that kind of rapport, what I found, has given us the insights into how many meters how many feet they're doing per day, how many meters of construction are getting completed in a day, how many are getting done in the week, what issues are they running into, what roadblocks are they running into. On the same side, from a network, how long does it take for us to turn up a new remote cabinet? Essentially, how long does it take to install an ONT? How long does an installer need? Those are the metrics that are kind of important for us, because we're trying to maximize how much time we have in a day for how many installs we can get done to keep up with the demand. And I don't want to take away from the next question so much, but COVID has really put a burn on our time and ability to get things done efficiently. You know, basically where 50 megs was enough or where 20 megs was enough, now we're seeing people upgrading to 100 meg and gig services with, you know, almost immediate regularity going forward. But yeah, I would say you have to watch everything, I guess is the best way to put it as a small company, until we can have extra staff that can monitor specific portions. Between myself, my staff, and my board, we just keep open, transparent communication. How many installs are going on? Everything's tracked in a centralized shared drive, so people have access to see how many installs are going on. Everyone can see in a calendar how many installs are scheduled for the week and other people's timelines and things like that. And that's, I think, like really good communication, transparency, and allowing your staff access to those critical numbers, I think, is what makes things sustainable.
And you're trying to automate more, right? You're trying to automate more.
Yep. Well, that's the step 2, is automating a lot of these processes, so there is more time for installs, so that someone isn't manually doing a speed change on a customer's profile or something like that, or adding television. That will get thrown to the customers who want to do it themselves.
Okay, that's good. So Rob sort of previewed the next question, gentlemen, which was, how did COVID transform or not how you're operating? So Russ, you lived in a area that was pretty locked down for a while, and I know Hank lived in an area that was pretty open, wasn't it? So you all had very different experiences. None of you have been locked down as much as Rob has, and I have family in Ontario, so I've heard the whole thing in living glory. So Russ, why don't you talk about how COVID might have transformed your operations?
Actually,
or not.
We were very fortunate in the fact that right off the bat, the state of Washington recognized that telecommunications was critical infrastructure. Because we're in the middle of trying to expand fiber to everyone in our county. We've got a few more years to go, but permitting and everything, the state actually prioritized. We had some very specific protocols put in place, but our contractor was allowed to continue to work as long as they followed all those protocols. And since they're outside, and they had to drive more trucks to the job sites and things like that. But honestly, they didn't skip a beat as far as the process goes. Did lose staff at times to quarantines, and a few of them did actually get sick. But overall, from a work perspective, due to the criticality of the telecom, we were able to keep pushing. Demand went through the roof. I mean, we've always kind of set a standard to be able to install new edge devices, new gateways, ONTs, whatever you want to call them, within 10 business days. And we had 7 install crews working all the time, and we weren't hitting 20 days. I mean, we're installing hundreds of these a month, as opposed to maybe 100 and a half in a month before that. So the demand absolutely went through the roof.
And Hank, how did it go for you?
Of course, we were deemed essential, being utility, but we had one thing that we were just lucky. In 2018, we'd been in the process of changing our legacy video platform to an over-the-top delivered via the internet platform. And because of that, we had been upgrading our backbone, and we had just launched our 10 gig residential offering. Well, one of the things we did through that whole process was to take our slowest internet speed, which at the time was 50 meg, and we bumped everybody at the bottom up to 100 meg. Well, that was really good, because that sort of had a ripple. We did 75, went to 250, and et cetera. We did that for folks. Well, 2020 rolls around, and our schools, before the schools were out in, say, March, April of that year, they went to all homeschool and folks started working from home. And having that extra bit of bandwidth and being prepared already for this video transition that we were in was a godsend. We saw there was a demand for the service. We did have a lot of folks up bandwidth even to a gig. A lot of folks working from home. We had folks that traditionally had not used our service because they didn't think the fiber, you know, there are a lot of people thought, well, the fiber, that's too fast. Why do we need that? What we got's fine, that kind of thing. So it changed when they've got mom and dad at home and two kids are, you know, hey, we can't do anything because everybody's online. And so there was a huge change there. Our video subscriptions on our new system went up because of that. And we also, same issue, talking about having two people show up with trucks at your house. We had to put the social distancing in place. We had all those kind of things. And we had a lot of customers that, hey, I want you to come to my house to work, but I'm really nervous about you being here. So we had to put a lot of protocols in place, you know, taking cleanliness to the next and hygiene to the next step. And we spent a little bit of money doing that with disposable gloves and whatever else. But we had a lot of customers that would leave the house while we would do the work and come back, and very, you know, different set of circumstances. Or customers would FaceTime us while they were working, and so they could sit in another room and not be around us. And so that was weird. But overall, that moved up our, you know, it did increase our sales. It made it harder. We had to work harder for the same amount of, you know, return, I guess. But it was good because we brought value to our service. People could see what a valuable service it was. And some of our other products, some of our phone offerings, our virtual PBX type offering, our VoIP offering, where people were now having to work from home and we could take their phone from their office and move it home now and be seamless. So there was a lot of, all of a sudden we had value in our service that people had never seen before from working from home. And that was a good thing. And we're still seeing that, even though schools are out now, they were still sort of half and half. Georgia was kind of let everybody do it a county by county basis. And we've just now started to, you know, really opening back up, but a lot of people are still working from home and they've seen the value of that and like the flexibility of that. So COVID was a sales boost, but gosh, it's been hard work because of the, you know, trying to separate and do things. We have had some supply chain problems, getting pieces and parts of certain things, but all in all, it was a boom. It was a boom.
Interesting. I think everybody involved in the fiber optics business has seen the demand jump exponentially and felt that it was a good thing for the industry. It finally sort of made the business case that this is an essential service. Let's discuss some of the network sustainability challenges and how you've integrated them into your system. So now, Russ, you probably are going to have this on the wholesale side as well, but let's talk about like new product applications, new products or applications that you roll out, or your your subscribers may roll out because of the systems you have. So I'm going to start with Rob because the example I gave was Smart Ag, and I know that he does fiber to the farm. So Rob, how have you incorporated new products and applications rollout into your systems?
Basically, you just have to adopt that the only constant is change. So how do you keep yourself sustainable is you never get stagnant. So particularly with Smart Ag, with IoT, with people learning to program from home. My 7-year-old son is upstairs who's already taken a white hat programming course kind of thing, which is not something that I would have ever seen at 7 years old. I mean, AS400, I don't even think was prevalent when I was 7, but like basically what it is as a service provider is I need to make sure that our transport network is connected to and peering with Amazon AWS. We need to make sure that we're connecting with Microsoft and we're peering directly with them. We need to make sure that we're creating and facilitating the ability for someone at home, for a farm, for a greenhouse, a growing operation to connect with whatever government services they need to. So when it comes to the devices and technology, it's really about not getting stagnant, and you always have to be kind of looking and adapting. And now we have greenhouses that are coming to us with pieces of equipment that I've never seen before, and they're coming and asking for solutions. Basically, after the fact, the greenhouse has been around for 10 years. There's high energy power lines going through the building, so they can't run any Cat 6 or Cat 6E or Cat 7 cabling, so they're installing fiber. But they don't know what fiber to buy. Do they buy single mode, multi-mode? And sorry if I'm getting a little bit too technical, but we had a greenhouse who basically bought a bunch of stuff off eBay, and it was the wrong kind of fiber, but they didn't know. They just thought all fibers were created equal. Then you couple into the fact that they might not have power out to where they need the fiber to go at the same point in time that's usable for electronics. So we start looking at technologies using like milliwatt spectrum, where it's fiber to the first radio, and then the radios are spread out amongst the facility, and we're using milliwatt and LoRaWAN to help attach the sensors and everything to these fully automated industries. So I think a lot of it is like separating your network, just like you would in a residential network, where you have your access network to the ONT, and then from there you have to be prepared to attach whatever's necessary and make sure that you're facilitating connections to whatever cloud software application peering point you need to be for them to be able to operate efficiently. And I think if you do that and you keep those two compartments, it makes it easier for you to sustain the changes. It makes it easier for you to adopt to the changes. In some cases, like one greenhouse in particular, and actually one just straight up commercial business, we're just working together to figure out what exactly their needs are. So they need some sensors, they have some RF, they have trucks that are coming in and out of a yard, they want to see when containers are leaving, they want that process automated. They want to know as the tags leave the yard where it's going to, with some geotagging and GPS enabled on their vehicles. So we don't offer that as a service provider, but they look to us to help facilitate how that application is going to talk to the internet and how fast it's going to talk to the internet. So we work with them to make sure, like, latency is like less than 10 milliseconds or something like that, depending on what their needs are going to be and depending on how real time they need it to be. Was I getting too much into the weeds there?
No, I think that's great. But these other guys on the panel know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, it's refreshing and cool all at the same time. But yeah, it's really about not resting on your laurels and thinking, oh, we got this. Even with television, we never thought that we'd ever graduate beyond set-top boxes, and now we're offering it as an app. It's still contained within our network. In Canada, we're not allowed to do over the top unless you're the internet service provider. But we can provide television as an app instead of a set-top box. So with new homes now that are being constructed absent of in-home wiring, because why would you wire for telephones anymore? Essentially, we're trying to find creative ways so that people who still want that traditional, launch the application, set-top box, have the remote kind of feel, can still access television that way as well. So it's, you really have to throw your brain outside the box and think about not conform to the standards that you're seeing around you and not rest on your laurels, I think is the best thing that I can say.
And Hank, are you finding the same thing with new products and application rollout? Have you been able to incorporate that into your systems?
We have the industry here is driven on productivity and time to market. So as they have changed their internal SCADA type applications, we've had to deploy. We had the same kind of challenges Rob mentioned. You've got areas where it's easy to get fiber to the premise somewhere or to a campus, but may not be so easy to connect it at 27 other locations there without spending a bunch of money. And his example about high voltage power lines going through, we've got a couple of customers that we had connected at the highest, at the highest voltage level we had ever connected, just because of the amount of machinery in a manufacturing facility. And so now all of a sudden, the issues that you would have in a substation or transformer yard, we've got in their MCC room in their plant. So now we've got to do wireless and those kind of things. So one of the things that, well, let's try to make this sort of simple. There's two things we've been able to do, or we have done to stay competitive and to keep the network growing and adding customers. One is always being ready for more speed in more places. Two is being able to merge another type of technology. Wireless is a good, as Rob mentioned, has been a good add-on, because we've been able to take the benefit of no infrastructure for wireless in places where you couldn't use it because of either induced current or safety, or gosh, you have to run fiber to too many things under existing concrete, through existing walls, those kind of things. We've been able to add functionality to our service where a customer now can, not only do they have just internet connection, we help them, give them insight into their own network where they're controlling something inside a plant. We can help them with that, so they can see, not only can they look at their own production metrics, they can look at, well, how much power are we using in this part of the facility, or how much water are we using in this process? And we've been able to let them sort of piggyback on some of that infrastructure. So, I guess being flexible with meeting customer needs and always increasing your internet speed seems to be the two things that have kept us competitive here.
And Russ, have you had any issues like that with your rollouts or with new products, or do you not get called into that because of
in the interest of time, I'll say we really don't get called into it as long as we have enough throughput on our network to handle what the service provider is trying to do at the retail point. I mean, exactly what Rob and Hank were talking about. That's what our service providers deal with. That's the fun stuff. We're just this little blah back here, give us faster speeds. And so we give them faster speeds.
As they say in the military, as they say in the military, speed kills, and the lack of speed will get you killed. So that's the.
But the ag, honestly, is some of the highest tech stuff you will run into. It happens on farms. Hank talked about it in some of the industrial settings, but on a farm, it's that on steroids with drones and all sorts of stuff going on. So the farmers are the high tech folks. We just give them speed.
Interesting. So what about in the customer centric area, your customer service? Has that been a big, again, your customers are your ISPs, Russ, but for Rob and Hank, do you see customer service becoming more and more automated and I know Rob thinks it's critical to be able to offload most of his customers onto automated systems. Hank, are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, there's, when customers call, we've been, up until the last few years, we've been extremely sensitive to being available for someone to answer the phone, when the customer called. I think one of the things we've tried to do is take mundane tasks off of the customer service folks, like Rob had mentioned, to where folks that want to have some sort of self-service can get to that quickly, whether that's payment information or being able to change an internet speed without having to go through and talk to somebody, or add on to their cable package without having to talk to somebody. So we've done that to make for people can get that access 24/7, but still we want to be sure we still are maintaining, maybe more than a lot of folks, a live body on the other end of the phone. We have not reduced that any over time. We've just tried to make those, when a person gets on the call, we've really focused on the customer service aspect and trying to talk to the customer while you're on the phone with them. Is there anything else about your service that we could improve or tweak or help you with? And that has been our focus. And customer service, I think, is what we really sell. That's more important than anything else we do. And we try to go above and beyond that a little bit. So we're trying to automate the things that people really want us to automate, where they don't have to, they can do something quickly and don't need to involve us. But the side of the house where they need to talk to us, we don't want to put people through decision trees about, hey, my remote doesn't work anymore, or what do I need to do to reset something. We don't want to do that. We want to talk to the customer, and I think that has paid dividends, because we'll help. That leads into helping somebody hook up their DVD player, or, you know, somebody, well, I bought this new thingamabob to connect to the internet, and well, I can help. Might be able to help you with that. So it's turned into that a little bit, and that's been our sort of claim to. We probably get more referrals that way. We'll just call. They'll help you figure that out, and that has been a good thing. So we want to keep that live body for really the real customer service issues. We want that live body to be focused on that.
So they still know you're local and you care.
That's right.
We are coming to the top of the hour, and I wanted to just close out this discussion. If others had questions, I'd be happy to ask them. I have one final one. If you guys had questions, do it in the chat room again. But I wanted to ask each of our panelists, what do you see are the biggest challenges to your company's sustainability going forward? Or is there none? So Russ, what do you see?
I would say retaining and training qualified staff, because to actually make it sustainable, they have to have a passion for it, because it always pops up as something different, and they have to be the investigator and solve the problem. And having that passion, that's hard to come by, and that's what's going to impact our sustainability in the future.
Hank and Rob, I see you.
I don't know that I could add anything to that. That is personnel, and good personnel, with a good attitude and with the desire to learn and get knee deep into it. Yeah,
It sounds to me like that's a good topic for the Broadband Bunch to talk about. Acquiring and maintaining good staff. Oh, Hank's saying, yeah, that's the way to go. So Craig, I'll let you wrap it up.
Absolutely. And what a great conversation. Fantastic job, Heather, as always. Some great nuggets of information there. I thought that focusing on customer feedback as a primary metric, and the goal of continually communicating things better to the customer, as well as improving internal training. That was huge, monitoring everything. And I thought there was an interesting point about relationship with the contractor reports, and the need for maintaining that relationship, automating as much as you can to allow for more installs, but getting back to the focus on customer service. And I think Rob put it like never resting on your laurels and not getting stagnant, and couldn't have said it better. Great topic, so important for everyone. And thanks to all our panelists for your expertise, your time today. Also a big thanks to the sponsors of the Zero Touch Learning Series. Our thanks to Utopia Fiber, DXTEL, and ETI Software Solutions. On behalf of everyone here, thanks for letting us be a part of your day. We'll see you next time on the very next Zero Touch Learning Series. So long.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.